So now we know it's recording. Okay. This camera has fixed focus and the focus really has to be there. And that cuts off the top of my head, which makes everything look a lot better. Okay. So, you know, that's the way it needs to be. I need to have a fixed focus here because anything doesn't have fixed focus has an autofocus that blurs things out. And sometimes I don't see that for 10 minutes and the video is trash. Okay. This little over $100 camera does a much better job than the much more expensive camera that I've got over there. Simply because it can't screw up the autofocus because it doesn't have autofocus. Set it where I want it. There it is. Okay, well, that's the camera. So we shouldn't have much trouble with the camera. The only problem is, well, let's see that when it comes up. Okay, this is pre-calculus. First place. Hopefully everybody's got the background for pre-calculus. And if you don't, hopefully you're in the MDE 61. There's an MDE 61 happens right before this class. And there's also a distance version of that. And if you find yourself getting in over your head, and I'm making every effort to design the course so you don't right away get in over your head. If you get in over your head, you got options. You can sign up for the distance class and get more support, or for the support course and get more support, either in class or distance. Or you could even, I'm pretty sure we can do this, drop this class and take the support class, which covers the same stuff, but a little more gently and doesn't risk a bad grade and gets you ready then to take the course in a later semester. That's an option. Okay. So you have those options, but work very hard so you don't need to take those options. Unfortunately, we're not allowed to placement test people, so I have no idea how people have prepared for this class. And in some cases, yeah, because they've had one of my classes before, one of the support or preliminary classes. Okay. So everybody looked at Canvas, read all the announcements, done everything? It says there. Well, I can say no, because only 2 people have signed up for MyOpenMath. And nobody has told me that they did. It's told me that they accessed the assignments page. Okay. So what I'm going to say is, I haven't checked my email. Maybe somebody told me within the last couple of hours, but they're instructions and you want to follow every one of those instructions so you don't get halfway through the semester and realize, oh, you can access the videos. Oh, there's stuff on the assignments page. What's that? Okay. Because that's where people end up after half the class is over. Okay. I wonder why they're not doing well, because they didn't follow the first instructions on Canvas. And nobody ever does. So I'm urging you today to read everything, okay, in the announcements and do everything it says. At that point, you'll be registered in MyOpenMath. You'll be able to do the assignment that's due today, which is the introduction to MyOpenMath, which takes how many minutes? Can you show me with one hand? Maybe 10 minutes, maybe twice that, depending on how fast you read. Okay, it's very easy, but you need it so you know how to enter stuff into MyOpenMath. All right, having said that, we're not going to use MyOpenMath that much for the first couple of weeks because we're going to do something else, because MyOpenMath is done on the computer and that's no way to learn mathematics. You gotta learn a little mathematics before what you're doing on the computer makes sense, and before you understand how important it is to write out what you're doing. You do it on a computer, you don't write it out, you don't retain it. True of 95% of the people. You might be an exception. Everybody in here might be the exception. Probability is pretty low. Okay? So we're going to emphasize writing things out. You write things out so you retain them, so that you don't get up to a test and haven't retained anything and therefore do poorly. We don't want that. Okay? You'll see more about what we're going to do because we're going to dive into it here today. Grading in this course. Oh, and another thing, don't let AI do your homework for you. Ask AI to explain things to you if you like. It can be very good. Okay, excellent, as a matter of fact. If you ask it to solve a problem, don't believe it because it'll make up a solution. Okay? I see all the time, every semester, maybe half the class that starts out is doing their assignments, getting everything right. Every day there's going to be a quiz. ChatGPT and copied the result. Okay? Online resource. That's guaranteed failure for anybody with an IQ of less than 150. Okay? And you probably don't know anybody with an IQ of 150. Okay. They're pretty rare. So do the work, write it out. As it says in the syllabus, I believe, you need a dedicated notebook for this course and you write everything in that dedicated notebook. And I'll take a look at that notebook sporadically. Not that I'm not going to grade you on it. If you don't have it, maybe you're getting it, maybe you aren't. I won't be able to tell. But if you do have it, I can spot things and I can address them in class. Okay? If I know what you're doing, if I can see what you're doing, then I can do you a lot more good than if I can't. And I can't see anything through chat, not through My Open Math. And you still want to do that. You get some good information from My Open Math. Amplifies what we do here in class. Okay, so number one, if you use AI, you're welcome to do that, but use it appropriately. You're also welcome to do it inappropriately, but it feels really bad for me to see people have to drop the course or fail the course. And that's almost inevitable if you habitually use it inappropriately. Okay. I'll give you more advice on how you might do that. You tell me how you're using it. What's working for you? What's helping you learn the material? Purpose of homework is, number one, learn what the homework is teaching you so that you come into class and pass a quiz. And that will be part of your grade. Okay. Now, the reason ChatGPT won't get you through this course if you use it wrong is that the homework and quizzes only count 20% of your grade. The rest of it is tests. There'd be at least 3 tests, probably 4. One of them probably in about 2 weeks. Just so you get some feedback how you're doing. And it's one that everybody should ace, be the easiest test you have. Timing of that, I want you to get that test before the drop date. Because if you find out that you're in over your head within that 2 weeks, you could drop back to the support course, which doesn't carry anything that affects your point average. It allows you to get a lot of information so that you could then take this course in the next semester and do well at it, okay? I want you to keep that option in mind because, you know, one factor or another might get in your way. Life gets in the way. Okay, schedules get in the way. Not enough time to get the stuff done gets in the way. And I see a lot of that in pre-calculus. Also, deficiencies in preparation. Everybody's got a deficiency in preparation somewhere. Okay. You know, I went to it right next to top-notch school. There are only about 5 top-notch schools in the country. It didn't offer anything under calculus, and it was a tough calculus course. I hadn't had pre-calculus. Okay. So I had to hustle. Now I had a good senior level course, taught me a lot about the logic and everything that most other people didn't. And ultimately that put me ahead of a lot of people. I was competing with top-notch students. Got through, started doing pretty well after the first year. So you come into these courses with deficiencies. I came into my college calculus with some deficiencies, also some real strengths. I mean, I really knew the trig, I really knew the algebra, but there were things I didn't know. And there are things that you don't know, depending on the way your earlier courses are designed, the way they were taught, the choices your instructors made. So when I say deficiencies, don't feel bad, everybody's got them. And if you've got too many, then you're going to have a tough time succeeding in one semester to complete a pre-calculus course, okay? Doesn't mean you don't want to try. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to approach this thing in a little different way. We're not even going to look at many numbers at the beginning and not that many symbols. We're going to look at shapes. You'll see how that works. Okay. Other aspects of the syllabus we'll talk about next time. We're in a short time today and we want to get into some stuff. I do expect you to have read the syllabus by the time you come in. You have a long list of objectives about, you know, rational functions and exponential functions, and logarithmic functions. And if you don't know what those things are, that stuff's not going to have any meaning to you. You can say, okay, there's a long list. Let's come back in 3 weeks and look at it and see if I know some of it. That's kind of what that list is, okay? But there's other stuff about the course. There's also stuff about, you know, what to do in a college emergency, just the usual stuff that you see in everybody's syllabus. Stuff about mental health help, because I do my best to drive you to mental health help. Okay. Well, no, I don't. Okay. Well, let me see if there are any questions at this point, and then we'll try to answer every other concern next time when hopefully we have a full period. Okay. Yeah, this is really tough. But try to use all your concentration. See if you can draw 2 vertical lines at least 3 inches apart. That's one. You draw 2 of them. It's going to look something like this. Okay. Now draw a dotted line halfway between. Dotted line halfway between your 2 vertical lines. I just want to see if you know where halfway is. Halfway is a big deal. Vertical. The verticals ups and down, horizontals back and forth. That's horizontal. That's a good horizontal line. You can keep it. It's not vertical line halfway between. This is why I walk around and see, because a lot of people tend to draw a horizontal line. Okay. Some of you drew your vertical lines a little too close together. But that's not great. It's a little close to this line here, but then I kind of corrected it here, so it's good enough. Okay. Now, and incidentally, a lot of you drew a line like this. That's not halfway between the lines. That's halfway along each line, just in terminology, and that's a horizontal line. This is vertical. Make sure you know vertical from horizontal. Okay. I remember having a little trouble with that when I was pretty far along in math. You know, what's vertical, what's horizontal? Didn't take me long. As soon as I realized I had to get it straight. Okay, now a line, a vertical line, halfway between the right edge and the center line. This is now the center line, right? Okay, halfway between the right edge or the line to the right and the center line. And when you get that done, do one halfway between the left and the center. Okay, for now, you want to really focus on halfway. Halfway between this and this. Halfway between this. Okay, so that's going to look about like this. Uh-oh, I'm too far to the left. Fudged it a little bit. See, that one got too close to the left. This one is closer to here than it is to here. Can't always tell which part of the chalk is going to write. That's my excuse. Okay. And it's not too close there, overcorrecting. It's a little wavy down here. It's still okay. Right? Now, halfway between each of the last two lines you drew and the center. We're just moving halfway to the center. So halfway from this line to the center, halfway from this line to the center. It's okay to keep. Don't need to do it. Okay. Now halfway from these two lines to the center. In your centers, you're getting halfway. Oh, there it is. Now, anyway, where makes it impossible to see. Okay. You're not going to get graded on how well you get halfway. You do have to be reasonable. Yeah, they should have those lines with the words and music. What are you doing? Okay. Nobody's much worse at halfway than I am, so that's good. All right, now, once you draw two horizontal lines, make them at least 3 inches apart. And then a line halfway between. There are a couple of ways to find the halfway point. Do this. About there. Does that look about right? That far? That, yeah, it looks good. Okay. If I can move my fingers at equal speeds, most people can do that. Okay. So there we have it. Now, I want you to go halfway from that last line you drew to the bottom. Halfway from the line you just drew to the lower line. Okay, everybody did real well with that. Then I asked halfway from the last line you drew to the lower line. There's the last line you drew. Here we have it. Okay. Then I said, repeat that instruction. What was the instruction? Halfway from the last line to the lower line. The last line is now this line, and you go halfway from there to the lower line. Right? Now, if you've done that, keep following that same instruction until you can't go any more, because halfway to the lower line's inside the lower line. How many more steps can you take before you just can't draw the line? Go halfway from the last line you do to the lower line. Yeah. And then continue going halfway from the last line to the lower line. Okay, now I ask everybody to continue the process. I think I recorded when I said that, but always halfway from the last line to the lower line. Most people say they got 5. Some people say they got as many as 6. Okay. And yeah, if you got a good sharp pencil, good eye, and a steady hand, you can squeeze another one in. Probably, maybe even 2, but probably not much more than that, because your pencil lines have thickness. And pretty soon those lines get closer than the thickness of your pencil line. Okay, so here I've got 5. Halfway to the bottom, then from here halfway to the bottom, and from here halfway to the bottom, and from here halfway to the bottom, from here halfway to the bottom. Okay, makes sense? Now I'm going to label this line. I'm going to call this line y equals 2. I'm going to make this line y equals 6. This middle line here would be what? Y equals what? Go ahead and put those labels on it and tell me what you think that middle line would be. Yeah, I'll say it. Okay, I'm looking around, a lot of people getting this. I don't want to look too closely because most people are going to have a little trouble with this when you get down a little further. Okay? So most people are telling me, okay, this line is between 2 and, well, everybody told me this is 4. That's halfway between 2 and 6. That's easy. And halfway between 2 and 4, because that's what this line is, right? Halfway between 2 and 4 is 3. Okay, what's the next one? It's halfway between 2 and 3. Recording, don't say anything. But halfway between 2 and 3, are you going to do that? Now, this is where people start getting into a little bit of trouble, because fractions are almost not done in K through 12. You're done in 5th grade, maybe a little bit more, and then everybody uses a calculator and doesn't understand fractions. Okay, you got to understand fractions. So I'm going to say this line is y equals 2.5. What's halfway between 2 and 3? 2.5, right? Then it gets a little tougher. What's halfway between 2 and 2.5? That's 2 1/4. Okay, and we don't want to use decimals. And then this last one here, y equals 2 1/8. A fourth is half of a half. An eighth is half of a fourth, right? So if this distance is a half, then this one distance would be half of that, which is a fourth, which gives you 2 1/4 and all that stuff, okay? And my experience in pre-calculus is in most classes that I've seen, a majority of students can't do these fractions or won't do these fractions in the first try, even though they understand it quickly when it's pointed out, okay? So there's a very common deficiency. Now, I didn't look closely enough to see who is getting the fractions right and who isn't. I stopped looking after 3, okay? Because everybody did really well with the halfway things. You got to be able to put numbers in these things, okay? Well, I'm going to do another thing here. I'm going to draw a couple of vertical lines. And then I'm just going to repeat what I did here. Halfway. And halfway. I didn't get the halfways quite right, but they're pretty close, okay? And now I'm going to draw a shape. Arguably the most important shape in mathematics. But there are other shapes that could. I'm going to start, you notice that I've got a rectangle here, okay? Big rectangle drawn by my first 2 horizontal lines and my first 2 vertical lines. And you know what I'm going to do with that rectangle is I'm going to even emphasize it by drawing the edges of the rectangle in color. Okay. You don't have to remember how to do this today, but after next time, you're going to have a variety of different shapes you got to be able to construct. I'm going to move over 1 to the left and 1 down and make a mark. Does that make sense? Okay. Well, then we're just going to repeat that. We're going to move 1 to the left, 1 down, make a mark. 1 to the left, 1 down, make a mark. 1 to the left, 1 down, and make a mark. So go ahead and draw yourself a couple of vertical lines. Draw a center line. The line's halfway from each edge to the center, and complete this diagram. Okay, again, now we've labeled these points. And we've drawn this picture with vertical lines, gives us a rectangle. We start at the upper right-hand corner, put 1 to the left and 1 down, and mark a point, right? And then we just continue that pattern, 1 left and 1 down. And y'all did real well with that. 1 left, 1 down. 1 left, 1 down. 1 left, 1 down. Now, some of you, lines get close together, and if you don't draw a pretty big diagram, it's pretty easy to skip too many lines. If you do 1 left, 1 down all the way, you are not going to end up on the lower corner, and you're not going to end up on that 5th line if you have one. You're going to end up on the line that I've labeled y equals 2 1/4, the 4th line, because you start at the top, 1, 2, 3, 4 lines down is the 4th line. Make sense? Okay, now what do you have? you have the exponential shape. Okay. You invest some pocket change, say $30,000. Go do 10,000. Okay. You invest $10,000 at 6% interest. It's going to double about every 12 years. These lines represent 12 years, 12 years here, 12 years, 12 years, 12 years. Okay. This represents how much money you have. Now, the labels Y equals 2, Y equals 6. Well, if it's an investment, you probably want to start at Y equals 0. And then you start with whatever. If this is $10,000, you put $10,000 here. After 12 years, it will have doubled. Another 12 years, it will have doubled again. Another 12 years, it will have doubled again. Another 12 years, it will have doubled again. Okay. These are doubling times. An exponential function is one that has a constant doubling time. Every 12 years, it doubles. If it's bacteria in your refrigerator, every 12 hours it doubles. Bacteria sitting out on your countertop, every hour it doubles. And pretty soon you got too many bacteria or too much money. You don't want that either. Okay, got a question. Okay, and analyzing these functions, we've got to build up, to analyze these functions, we have to build up some algebra. Okay. I don't assume that you, and in some cases, I don't assume that everybody is adept enough with their algebra to deal with it right now. So we're going to try to build that up a little bit while we're talking about the real subject, which is these shapes and how they're used. Because once we can draw these shapes, and the other two are just about as easy to draw as this one. Once we can draw these shapes and put a few numbers on it sometimes, we have an overview of what is important in this course. Okay, and a framework within which we can understand pre-calculus and take that on and understand calculus. So you got to stick with me and do this homework. You have a fairly extensive assignment this weekend. Be sure you're here next time so we can prepare you for it. It's a little too late to do much algebra right now, but I am going to show you a couple of things that you really should know. But we'll talk about them in a little more detail. So I recommend that you tune into this part of the video, because I'm going to say this pretty quickly, or when you're on the assignments page, you have access to the MDE 61 videos, the support course, right before this. You're welcome to look at those. Okay, because one of the things we did there, what's x squared cubed? And what's x squared times x cubed? Most people have trouble with that. Okay, most pre-calculus students come in and make mistakes with this. X squared cubed means x squared times x squared times x squared, because cube means you multiply that thing 3 times, right? And an x squared is an x times an x. So you got 3 sets of 2 x's. Gives you 6 x's, which is x to the 6th. You need to lock that in and keep it there. Okay? X squared times x cubed, on the other hand, means you got 2 x's here and 3 x's here. It gives you 5 x's. That's x to the 5th. And it's really easy to mix up these rules. Here's one rule, here's the other rule. If you raise a power to a power, you got to multiply those powers. If you understand this, you understand why you have to multiply the powers. Here, if you multiply a power of x times a power of x, you add the powers because that's what you do here. Okay? You see some stuff here about powers of 2. Okay? See how much I want to say. I'm going to see how much time. I've got time to say this. Okay. First, we list values of 2 to the first, 2 to the second, 2 to the third, 2 to the fourth, 2 to the fifth. Okay, those are 2, 4, 8, 16, and 32. And if you can't do that in your head, you need to think about it. Okay? So we have that much. Now, the powers go fifth, fourth, third, second, first. What's the next number after 1 in the sequence 5, 4, 3, 2, 1? Well, it's obviously 0, right? What comes next? -1. What comes next? -2. So here are our powers of 2 continued on into the negatives. Okay? Now, every number as we go from right to left is double the number before it. So every number going that way has got to be half the number before it, right? That means, for example, a 2 to 0 has to be half of 2, which is 1. And 2 to the -1 has to be half of 1, which is 1/2, which I write as 1 over 2 raised to the 1. And half of that is 1/4. So 2 to the -2 is 1 over 1/4, which is 1 over 2 squared. And 2 to the -3 is seen to be 1 over 2 cubed. So you have this rule, 2 to the -n equals 1 over 2 to the n. And it applies to any number, not just 2. A to the -n is 1 over a to the n. Okay? One other little thing I've got written here. What's 2 to the third times 2 to the -3? Well, we can use this rule where we add the exponents, right? It's 2 raised to 1 power multiplied by 2 raised to the other. The exponents are 3 and -3, so it's 2 to the 3 minus 3. 3 minus 3 is 0. That's 2 to the 0. What's 2 to the 0? It's 1, as we just saw. Okay? Now, that's stuff about rules of exponents that I think if you understand, you're ahead of 75% of the people that sign themselves up for pre-calculus. But everybody needs to understand those things. So I recommend that you ponder this now so you don't trip over it later. Because when you're tripping over things that you're expected to know at a point, it's a big stumbling block. It makes it 3 times, 5 times, 10 times as hard to learn the thing that you need to learn. Okay? You don't want stumbling blocks. You want to be able to learn in small steps. And that's the way I've tried to design at least the first 3 minutes of this course. You'll see more about that next time. We'll do some more. We'll do some algebra, just simple algebra. But every assignment is then going to build a little bit on what we've done in the previous assignments. Okay? To the point where in 3 weeks you'll be ready to really handle the course without stumbling. That's the goal. And if you stay with it, and if you do the homework and everything, ask questions when you have them, I think it's going to work out well for you. I certainly hope so. Okay, good to have you here today. Look forward to seeing you Thursday.